The biggest mistake your adversaries ever made was believing their little brains could assess your magnificence. Listen, chosen one. They laughed at you, dismissed. You murmured behind your back like cowards. They misunderstood your tolerance for stupidity, your silent mastery over weakness. Now, they're choking on their own hubris as they see you soar in ways they never imagined imaginable. Their confidence is deteriorating. Their pride is rotting from within because the reality is hurting them harder than it ever did you. They were clueless to the magnificence in front of them. They thought they had you figured out, right? I thought you were beneath them, someone to ignore. But their ignorance has become their misfortune. Those who scoffed at you can no longer avoid the shame of knowing. They made a serious error in their calculations. They based their delusions of superior power on sand. And now that the tide is rolled in, every triumph you claim is another brick in their fantasy. Every step ahead reminds you that they were never on your level in the first place. And you are the chosen one. Make sure you receive this message properly. To disseminate this information to more chosen ones, click the like, unsubscribe button. Every time you participate, YouTube receives a signal to promote this reality farther. Let them see. Let them feel it. Because the more of us awaken, the faster their illusions disintegrate. You see, chosen one, this isn't simply vengeance. Balance is being restored. The universe does not tolerate hubris. When they rejected you, they weren't simply insulting you. They mocked the powers that picked you. And now they are plagued by their own stupidity. The force that surrounds you, the knowledge that directs you, it is not something they can understand. It was not intended for them. This is why they mistaken it for nothing. The universe has a way of holding individuals accountable for their hubris. They are restless because you have not lifted a single finger. Why do their thoughts devour them alive? They cannot stop thinking about how they could have treated you better, when they might have listened rather than laughing. They misjudged something they were never intended to comprehend, and remorse is tearing them apart. Observe how their energy alters as you enter the room. They shrink, avoid eye contact, appear confident, and then collapse like a burst balloon. They know. Oh, they know. They sense it. Your very presence constitutes judgment. The weight of their ignorance lies on their chest like a mountain, bearing down with each victory you claim. That is the cost of underestimating a chosen one. Your very presence haunts them. They see your progress and strength, and it scares them, because they know deep down that they had access to something remarkable, but threw it away. They believed they were above you, but now they are striving to convince themselves that they never needed you. But we both understand the reality. They have lost something that they will never get back. And the greatest part? You didn't have to do anything. You did not need to seek vengeance. You didn't have to explain yourself. You simply become greater. The universe takes care of the rest, since that is how things operate. When a chosen one is undervalued, neglected, or mistreated, the cosmos keeps score. When it is time to balance the scales, it doesn't just rectify the error. It lets them feel the full extent of their folly. So walk tall, keep winning, and prove that their ideas were never important. Because the greatest punishment for your opponents is not your rage, but your accomplishment. And believe me, they feel it every day. Thank you. Yes, you are the chosen one. Whether you're new to us or have been with us for a long time, your presence contributes to this irresistible power. They doubted you. They dismissed you. But now, every second you spend honing your thinking, accepting your power, and refusing to shrink is their worst fear come true. So, if you're ready to let them experience the full impact of their error, press the like button, subscribe, and drop number 77. In the comments, claim the intellect they felt you lacked, and now let's take it step by step. Believe me, if you are genuinely selected, you will feel compelled to remain until the very end. Let's get to it. First and foremost, they dismissed you as insignificant. Their hubris has now caught up with them. The worst error was underestimating the person who was discreetly analyzing your every vulnerability. They never saw you coming. It's not because you were weak, not because you were unimpressive, but because you never played their game while they flaunted their alleged brilliance and sucked up recognition like a narcotic. You remained silent, strengthening your thoughts, controlling the invisible. They saw your silence as ignorance, your tolerance with helplessness. But now, they're now choking on their own mistake. The cosmos has always worked in your favor, aligning every obstacle, setback, and betrayal to shape you into something invincible. They played their little games, manipulating and conniving, believing they had the upper hand. What they didn't comprehend was that the system they felt they had control over was never intended for them. The chosen ones have always acted beyond their illusions, moving in unpredictable ways, thinking in ways they don't understand. They laughed at you. "I dismiss you," whispered behind closed doors. But now the doors are slamming shut on them. They played chess with someone who wasn't even on the same board because, while they were fighting over crumbs, you were constructing the entire bakery. They intended to dominate you, make you doubt yourself, and squeeze you into their small box of expectations. But chosen ones do not fit into boxes. We shattered them. The best advantage you have ever had: being neglected. The world has always dreaded what it cannot easily categorize. It requires labeling, must describe you in a way that makes sense to them. When they couldn't, they concluded you were beneath them. They thought that quiet indicated insignificance. Patience implied passivity, but they never realized that stillness is the breathing room of strength. The waiting game. That's where revolutions start. History repeats this lesson over and over, yet people never learn. Nikola Tesla was mocked by those who clung to the past, only to reinvent the future. J.K. Rowling was passed over by publishers who couldn't see the vision, only to become a global sensation. Steve Jobs was expelled from his own brainchild, only to return and transform the world. You're no different. Those who disregarded you, who said you weren't smart enough, powerful enough, or bright enough, will be compelled to admit what they previously overlooked. Not because you need to be validated, but because your success exposes their stupidity. They spent so much time gazing down on you, believing they had it all figured out. However, every step forward now seems like a weight on their chest. They are unable to leave their current existence. They didn't simply underestimate you. They misjudged the forces that picked you. And when a chosen one does move, it is never risky. It is exact. It's unstoppable. They believed they were ahead. They thought they had complete control. However, the chosen ones do not pursue opportunities. We make them. We do not ask for power. We become it. And those who overlooked you, they haven't realized they've already lost. So let them regret it. Allow them to feel all of their hubris crumble beneath them. Because when the dust settles, you'll be standing precisely where they predicted you'd never be. Number 2, their hubris was their greatest risk, and now they are suffering the price. Nothing bothers a fool more than knowing that the person they derided was always 10 steps ahead. The ascension of a chosen one is quiet. It's not desperate. It does not seek permission. It just occurs, unstoppable, unmistakable, and irrevocable. And by the time the world knows what is happening, it is too late. They assumed they had you figured out. They trusted their own falsehoods, that if you didn't demand attention, you didn't deserve to be seen at all. They interpreted quiet for stupidity, patience towards weakness, humility for ineptitude. But their hubris has now become a burden. They played themselves. Arrogance causes blindness, poisoning, and weakness. It persuades morons that they are geniuses, that their fragile domination is true power, and that their loud voices have significance. But this is the reality. The fact is that the most dangerous people in history have always been unexpected. They disregarded David as a shepherd child until he defeated a Goliath with a single stone. They dismissed Einstein as a sluggish, ungainly boy until he rewrote the fundamental principles of reality. They mocked Oprah, believing she would never get above the status of local news anchor until she constructed an empire they could never have imagined. History teaches the same terrible lesson. Never underestimate the quiet ones or the unassuming. The ones who observe, who is listening, who calculates. The ones who are not motivated by ego. But there is an irresistible power within. And yet, idiots never learn. They insulted you, laughed at you, muttered behind your back, and thought they were superior because they had convinced themselves of their own brilliance. But they didn't comprehend this. You never competed with them. You were never playing their game and never sought their approval. And this is what scares them the most. You didn't need their permission to be everything they said you wouldn't be. They can now feel it. That sinking knowledge, that nagging remorse. It follows them around. Every step you make, every level you advance. It burns them from within. They choose to disregard you. They decided to laugh at you. And now they must deal with the repercussions of their own blindness. Because this is the ultimate weakness of hubris. It causes blind spots. The moment someone convinces oneself that they have all the answers, they cease searching for new ones. They deny potential, overlook threats, and worse, fail to recognize greatness. If it does not arrive in a form that they recognize, that is why people fail to recognize you for who you truly are. That is why they have that name. Intelligence is nothing more than an illusion. They believed they had complete power over anything that they could define. You limit yourself, reducing yourself to their narrow viewpoint. But now they're choking on their error. Regret is their jail. They created it with their own hands. Here's the finest part. You never had to do anything other than keep moving, developing, and becoming. The cosmos took care of everything else. So let them to feel it. Allow them to dwell in their shame. Because all they can do now is watch you become everything they said you'd never be. And believe me, it is the harshest punishment of all. Number 3, they have a chance now. They have nothing left but remorse. The worst anguish does not come from losing. It is understanding that you had no idea what you had until it was gone. At first, they don't notice much. The change is so slight that it does not register. Your name pops up in talks where it never has before. Your work begins to make ripples in locations they previously believed were exclusive to them. At first, they dismiss it, a fluke, a coincidence, or a brief stroke of luck. But it happens repeatedly until denial is no longer an option. They mock the individual and their name. They sneered at the presence. They confidently overlooked you. You're becoming something they can no longer ignore. And now it is too late. They had the opportunity to appreciate you, agree with you, and acknowledge your worth before the rest of the world did. However, they were too arrogant and misled by their own false feeling of superiority. They assumed they did. You realized you were inconsequential and that you would never climb above what they had decided you were. But what they failed to realize is that chosen ones do not require permission to become great. And now they can feel it. The moment it all comes together in their minds. The moment they realize with unwavering clarity that you were never beneath them, never be behind them. You merely waited, preparing, sharpening your talents while others spend their time underestimating you. And now, when you completely assert your authority, their trust crumbles beneath the weight of their own misjudgment. The laughing had faded, the arrogance had worn off, and their once certainty about their own significance had been replaced with the terrible reality that they were never as strong as they believed they were. And now the dynamic has changed forever. They are no longer in charge. The tables have turned, and sorrow is eating them alive. They struggled to make sense of it and explain why they hadn't seen it coming. How did this occur? How did they make such a huge error in calculations? How could they fail to notice what was there in front of them the whole time? But deep inside, they already know the answer because they were never as intelligent as they imagined. They believed their own delusions. They believed they could assess power by surface-level arrogance. They felt brilliance was about who could speak the loudest, control the discourse, and make others feel tiny while wielding actual power. It does not demand attention. It orders it, and now they watch helplessly as possibilities they previously took for granted slide by them. The doors that were formerly wide open for them are shutting. The most horrific element is that they are shutting in before their very eyes, with nothing they can do to stop it. They missed out big time because they weren't just mistaken about you. They were mistaken about everything. They believed they had you covered. I thought they had it all figured out. However, the individual they rejected is now acknowledged. Respect was sought after. You're flourishing while they're struggling, and it is too late for them. They had a chance to unite with you before the rest of the world recognized your importance. They had the chance to walk beside you rather than gaze down at you. But their hubris blinded them. They are now left with nothing except remorse. Allow them to feel regret. Allow them to sit in their stupidity. Allow them to grapple with their own stupidity. Because the fact is that you never needed them. They are now aware of this as well. Number 4. The price of hubris is remorse, which they can never reverse. The cruelest punishment is not failure. It's discovering you had everything you needed to win, but were too blind to recognize it. They believed they were ahead. I thought they had you figured out. However, they were consistently outmaneuvered. Their hubris did not only blind them, it buried them. They didn't see it coming because they didn't think they needed to. And now, they now have nothing except regrets. Power does not proclaim itself. It does not need to. It moves silently, growing, adapting, and weaving between the gaps of hubris until it becomes unmistakable. And by the time they realize who you really are and what they have lost, it is too late. Regret is the greatest weight a fool can bear. It lingers. It festers. It torments the mind with the cruelest inquiry of all. What if? What if you had been handled differently? What if they had witnessed the truth before? It was undeniable. What if they had sided with you instead of dismissing you? But hindsight is worthless to the arrogant, because by the time they realize their error, the doors they previously passed through so easily are permanently closed, and they are aware of it. History is riddled with examples of people who lost everything because of their hubris. Kodak scoffed at digital photography. They are now a historical footnote. Blockbuster had the opportunity to acquire Netflix for a measly $50 million. They chuckled, thinking their kingdom was untouchable. Yahoo dismisses Google as inconsequential. They could have bought it for $1 million. Google's current valuation exceeds $1 trillion. However, this isn't just about corporations. It is personal. The mentor who refuses to help you develop your potential. Now they're watching from the sidelines while you outperform them. A previous peer who mocked your ideas. They are currently struggling to catch up. Your employer devalued you. They're now forced to watch you create something far better than they could possibly imagine. These were not just mistakes. They were acts of arrogance. The inability to acknowledge genius merely because it did not meet their narrow expectations. They are now left with just the bitter taste of regret. They underestimated you. I thought you were trivial, forgettable, and inconsequential. But now, every achievement you have is a reminder of their failure. Every action you do shows them wrong all over again. The hardest part is that they know things may have turned out differently if they had opened their eyes sooner. If only they had given up their hubris. If only they'd seen you before. The entire globe did. But the past does not provide second opportunities. They are now imprisoned in their own failure, watching, regretting, and realizing that they have portrayed themselves the worst manner conceivable. Allow them to sit in their remorse. Allow them to grapple with their own stupidity, since there is no reversing this. They missed their opportunity. Number 5, they believe their arrogance rendered them untouchable. It is now their worst curse. Arrogance is not only blindness. It is self-destruction masquerading as confidence. The pain of their arrogance is permanent since they had the opportunity to stand beside you. They had the opportunity to observe something remarkable, be a part of it, to unite with brilliance. Previously, it was indisputable. They let it go through their fingers. Now, they are now watching from outside, haunted by the error. They will never recover from their demise, which was not your ascent. Their downfall was their reluctance to admit it. They rejected you without a second thought, laughed behind closed doors, and wrote you off as a footnote in their tale. But now they see you were never a footnote. You were the entire dang book. It's too late to turn back the pages. In a world that associates loudness with power, the chosen ones comprehend something deeper. True strength consists in remaining silent while others clamor for attention. Every modest achievement is broadcast as if it were a big victory. You remained in the shadows, observing, calculating, and learning. They misread your quiet for weakness. But what they never realized was that power is not about loudness. It's all about control. The finest warriors never reveal their future moves. The most fearsome brains, like the fiercest beasts, do not roar before striking. They do not need to demonstrate their genius to anybody. They departed. The outcomes speak for themselves. They should have known better. Take a look at chess. The more competent players do not betray their plans as early. They lulled their opponents into a false sense of security by making little, seemingly unimportant movements. Then, with a single stroke, they utterly annihilate their opponent. This is how the chosen ones move. That is how you operate. They believed they were in charge. They believed they were winning. They now sat in bewilderment. You were carrying out a strategy that they had no idea was developing. Because while they were rejoicing, you were preparing and they were flaunting their hollow achievements. You were growing unstoppable. Now checkmate. And this is the worst thing for them. They cannot reverse it. In the field of business, the most astute businesses operate discreetly. They do not reveal their plans. They create their most potent ideas behind closed doors, out of the sight of competition. By the time their idea is known, it is too late for anybody to respond. This is precisely what you did. You walked softly, avoiding the traps of their judgment, contempt, and efforts to confine you because you knew the truth. Your accomplishment was never intended for their approval, and now they're searching for answers, justifications for whatever reason. Aside from the fact that they were never as powerful as they thought, because power is more than just learning the game. It is about knowing when to move. They underestimated you. They assumed you were not a threat. Now they are plagued by their mistake. Regret is a merciless master, since every action you make reminds them of what they have lost. Every accomplishment of yours is another nail in the coffin of their ego. They believed they had control over the narrative, but they failed to recognize this. The chosen ones do not follow the script. They rewrote it, and now they are forced to live in a world where you are indisputable, where their arrogance no longer protects them from reality, where their superiority complex crumbles under the weight of cold, hard truth, and where they no longer have control. And you don't need vengeance. You don't need affirmation, since the best punishment for them is not your rage, but your accomplishment. That is something they can never take back. Number 6, they attempted to define you. They are now watching as you redefine everything. The most harmful intellect is the sort that cannot be measured. Now let us take a minute to commemorate the chosen ones. Here's to those who see the world differently. The quiet guards and vigilant spirits, always alert and watchful. Those who refuse to be molded into something lower, forging their own paths while others cling to the known. Those who understand that true power is not about following rules. It is about rewriting them. They don't fit in, but they wouldn't want it any other way. While the world celebrates the predictable, the selected remain silent, fighting fights no one else sees, illuminating the darkness that others are frightened to approach. It is not for everyone, and that is the point, because being picked does not imply approval. It's about the truth. The fact is that they never understood you. They assumed they had you all figured out. They believed they could determine your value using the same outdated formulae they had always used: grades, social rank, connections, and privilege. They allocated numbers to intelligence equations, assuming that success was possible inside their frail little system. What they didn't comprehend was that the chosen ones don't follow formulae. We shatter them. History belongs to outliers. Einstein was considered a failure by the very system that today teaches his theories in all schools. Elon Musk was mocked for his outlandish ideals, which ultimately reshaped whole industries. Vera Wang did not design her first outfit until she was 40. Despite being discarded, she now dominates a field. Colonel Sanders did not franchise KFC until his 50s, illustrating that excellence has no expiration date. So, what do they all have in common? They were underestimated not because they lacked intelligence or capability, but because they did not match the typical success profile. And neither do you. That is why they questioned you. That is why they laughed, dismissed, ignored, because their minds can only handle what is safe, known, and familiar. And you? You were never intended to be predictable. The arrogant cling to reasoning because it brings them comfort. They want everything to fit neatly into small boxes, to be labeled, and to be understood in their own terms. And if something does not fit, they reject it because they believe that if something cannot be explained, it is not real. This is why they rejected you. Not because you weren't bright, but because their narrow, outmoded mathematics couldn't accommodate your genius. But actual intellect does not follow their rules. True intellect lives on innovation, resilience, and adaptability, when the previous rules are no longer applicable. And that is precisely why the chosen ones do not just succeed. They demolish the whole system. By the time the world realizes their brilliance, the old institutions that formerly attempted to confine them have become outdated. The same folks that previously laughed, they're trying to catch up. They believe that by using superficial measures, they could measure, define, and control your fate. However, they fail to see that the finest brains do not follow the system. They generate new ones. And now they are forced to sit back and watch you transform into something they never expected. By the time they recognize your worth, you've already advanced past them. And it is the ultimate justice. Number 7, the weight of their own remorse. Certain errors can be remedied. Underestimating a chosen one is not one of them. At first, they deny seeing it. They convince themselves it's only a coincidence that your success is a fluke, that your climb is fleeting, and that everything will fall apart. But deep inside, they know. They can feel the sorrow coming in like a slow-burning fire, eating away at them little by bit. Shame, recognition, and the irrefutable truth. They let something remarkable pass right through their fingers. And this is the bit that bothers them the most. They can't go back. They had every opportunity to support you, stand by your side, and show you respect. Before the world recognized your value, your name had weight, and your power was unmistakable. However, they were too arrogant, too blind, and too certain of their own superiority to see what was right in front of them. And now, They are now watching from the sidelines, and it is eating them alive. At first, they attempted to defend it. Maybe they were lucky. Perhaps they changed. Perhaps I was correct about them back then. However, such falsehoods don't last long, since you're everywhere they look. Thriving, winning, becoming. You demonstrate that they were never as intelligent as they believed they were. Their arrogance was more than simply a character fault. It was their demise. They watch as you do things they said you would never do. And the regret? It's suffocating because they don't just regret underestimating you. They regret what they missed up on during the process, such as the chances, information, and experiences they may have had. Instead, they chose to scorn, ignore, and disbelieve. And now, they've been left behind. Regret is a slow poison. It starts simply with a fleeting notion and a faint uneasiness. But it lingers. It festers. It increases. It leads to restless nights and quiet moments of revelation. When they hear your name, they get a pit in their gut. It is the hesitancy to express your triumph aloud. It's the forced grin when someone compliments you in front of others, since the truth is unavoidable. They didn't just neglect you. They have failed you. And it's too late to correct it. You do not need their permission. You never did, and now they must bear the weight of their own remorse, knowing they squandered their opportunity. Number 8 is the quiet that haunts them. You don't have to say anything. Your accomplishment speaks for itself and is loud. They recall the last time they chatted with you. They spoke with arrogance. The tone in which they spoke was condescending. They tossed you away like you were nothing. They believed they were superior. They assumed they had you figured out. But now, their words have dried up. They're at a loss for words now that reality has demolished their previously held belief. This individual, they disregarded the name. They sneered at their presence. They chose to ignore. You're everywhere now, thriving, increasing, and unmistakable. And they can't handle it since their biggest error was not simply underestimating you. It assumed they would always be able to do so, and now the stillness is eating them up. They used to mock you. They now avoid you. They used to roll their eyes whenever you talked. Now, they can't even meet your look. They used to disregard your suggestions. Now they are stealing from them. The most painful thing is that you have not even addressed them. You have not called them out. You have not sought retribution. You just kept moving. And this is what kills them most. They expected you to crumble. They expected you to crawl back, pleading for their approval and expecting to be validated. Instead, you became something they'll never be able to access again. And the truth is smothering them. Your accomplishment is currently the biggest sound in their universe. They hear your name in talks they aren't involved in. They see your work in areas they never imagined you would go. They feel your presence even when you aren't present. Because, to be remembered, you don't have to be present. They feel it every time. He praises you. Each time someone recognizes your brilliance. Every time someone compliments you in a way they never did before. It stings because they had the opportunity to stand with you before the world recognized your greatness. But their pride blinded them. They allowed their hubris to convince them that you will always be beneath them, aiming for less. And now, they are now unable to evade the reality. Because every time they hear about your achievement, they are reminded of their own stupidity. You don't even need to say, "I told you so." The quiet speaks for you. You do not reach out, that you do not acknowledge them, that you do not desire their favor. That is the actual punishment. They want to feel they are still important in your world. They want to think that they are still important to you. But the fact is that you have already moved on, and that's what bothers them. Because your silence is more than simply a lack of words. It represents the existence of your achievement. They are now the ones left dumbfounded. Number 9, the doors that are permanently closed. They believe they were shutting you out. Instead, they shut themselves inside. They believed they were keeping you out. I assumed they were impeding your route. eliminating your prospects and preventing you from progressing. They felt they possessed the keys, and that without their approval, connections, and so-called prestige, you would never succeed. But today, the same doors that they previously guarded are no longer relevant since you've erected your own. And the instant they realize this is when the fear sets in. They spent a lot of time attempting to keep you little, sure that without them, you would never achieve anything. They convinced themselves that their small circle was the center of the globe. Their dominance was permanent, that they might decide who rises and who stays below them. But what they failed to realize is that the chosen ones do not wait for permission. They shape their own fate. They used to control these networks. You have outdone them. They believed they were hoarding opportunities. You have outgrown them. The areas they attempted to keep you out of, they no longer exist in your universe. The worst part, now they want in. They see the empire you've created, the power you wield, and the respect you command. Suddenly, they recall your name. They suddenly want to reconnect, support you, and behave as if they have always believed in you. However, the chosen ones do not dwell on the past. They march onward. They did not see your worth while it was there in front of them. They had a chance. Instead of supporting you, they obstructed your progress. Now they're on the outside, and it is what burns them the most. Not only did you achieve, but you did so without them. They convinced themselves that they were gatekeepers, and that their approval was essential to success. However, while they were occupied protecting doors, you constructed a whole empire. Now they glance around and see something dreadful about the world. They believe they reigned over nothing since true authority had never been in their hands in the first place. The fact is that those who want to exclude others are always left behind. This hubris blinds them. They believe that simply because they had brief control over access means they had power over destiny. However, they never did, because hubris does not win over fate. It acknowledges those who refuse to be defined by it. And that is why they are now stuck behind the doors they previously used against you. Number 10. The cost of hubris. Underestimating the chosen one cost them more than just an ally. It cost them their tranquility. They believed they could write you off and never look back. I thought they could reject you and go on. They were secure in their hubris, confident that they had made the correct decision. However, life has a way of creating fools out of those who refuse to recognize reality. It's not simply that they missed out. They are unable to flee. Everywhere they turn, there you are. Your name appears in talks they believe they controlled. Your accomplishment reverberates in areas they previously claimed as their own. The society they formerly governed is altering, reinventing itself around a fact they refuse to acknowledge. You are rising as they fall behind. At first, they attempted to ignore it. They convinced themselves it's nothing, that it's only transitory, and that you'll fade away like all the others they've neglected. However, time has repeatedly proven them incorrect. And with each victory you claim, their own mirror gets more difficult to look at, because they realize they might have been a part of your tale. They might have stood by you, learned from you, and developed alongside you. They may have been linked with something bigger. However, their hubris would not allow it. Their pride had blinded them. And now they're plagued by their own error. Every reminder stings, every headline, every mention of your name, every moment when someone else sees the greatness you overlooked. It eats at them because they are now compelled to acknowledge a fact they did not want to believe. You were never below them. You were beyond them. They used to smirk whenever they heard your name. They now fall quiet. People who used to disregard you now murmur about you in hushed tones. The same ones that said you weren't good enough now pay attention to everything you do, looking for a way to make sense of what they didn't see. They spend their days reflecting on the past, wondering where they went wrong, looking for a moment. There was one point in time when they could have made a different decision. However, it is impossible to undo what has been written. They made a decision. They sealed their fate and the consequences of their hubris. It is permanent since you no longer need them, and the reality alone is enough to keep them up at night. They believed they had control. They believed they held power. They thought they were making the proper decision when they disregarded you. But now, each step you take is a reminder of their own failure. They didn't simply miss out on you. It's that they missed out on the version of themselves they could have been if they had made a different decision. That is what burns the most. Not only are you winning, they are no longer important to your success. Your tale continues. Your legacy and impact spread. And they are simply a lost chapter. The irony is that they believe they were leaving you behind. But this is the reality. You outgrown them. Number 11. The revenge of success. They felt you needed them. They can no longer escape you. Your greatest comeback didn't include proving them incorrect. It never needed them in the first place. They used to laugh at you. They are now studying you. They used to disregard you. They are now unable to stop watching. They used to speak down to you, dismiss your smirk as you talked. Now they wish they had listened. And the irony? You don't care. You never seek their favor. And it is what worries them the most, because arrogance led them to feel they were the gatekeepers to success. They felt their affirmation was the missing element you needed. They are now compelled to embrace a reality for which they were unprepared. You've never required them. That revelation is a gradual, scorching torture. They don't comprehend how someone they previously dismissed has risen above their level. How the very person they dismissed has become someone they can't shake. Everywhere they turn, there you are. Your name. In talks, your success unfolds right in front of them, and your influence grows while they remain stationary. They believed they were at the center of the universe, but they are now orbiting around you. They can't stop watching, not because they want to help you, but because they need to comprehend how things went so wrong, how they neglected to notice what was there in front of them. And the worst part? It is too late. They cannot erase the times they overlooked. They can't go back in time and join you before the rest of the world finds out. Their window has closed, and they can feel it. That's why I'm studying you right now, agonizing over the intricacies and attempting to decipher the blueprint for success. What they don't comprehend is that there is no pattern for getting picked. They could never reproduce your power because they lacked it from the start. And now you don't even notice them. They are no longer impediments or voices of doubt in your thoughts. They are only shadows from your past, silent and unimportant, powerless, because great power is not about exacting retribution. It is about getting so big that vengeance becomes obsolete. You don't need the recognition you never received, and it is what burns them the most. Number 12. The legacy of the chosen ones. They believed they could define your story. Instead, they became a forgotten chapter in history. This is how things always end. The chosen ones flourish, while the arrogant fall, as do those who misjudge them. They become irrelevant. At first, they tried hard to convince themselves that you didn't matter, that you weren't exceptional, and that you'd never amount to anything other than what they'd chosen. But now reality has destroyed their illusions, since while they squandered their time indulging in their own superiority complexes, you were constructing something genuine while they sought approval. You wanted progress, but they clung to their fragile egos. You developed, and now, they have now been left behind. They originally felt they were the story's major protagonists, always on top and in charge. However, they were only a little stumbling block in your quest. Their hubris wiped them out of your future, and now the world continues on without them. Because this is the truth. Time is merciless. It does not wait for arrogant people to learn their lesson. It does not give them time to recoup from their blunders. It continues moving, and those who felt they were untouchable are left watching while the drama unfolds without them. Regret is their lone friend now that they had the opportunity. An opportunity to be a part of something bigger, to see your progress, to walk beside you rather than look down on you. However, they allowed their pride dictate the decision for them. Pride is a fool's compass. They're now seeing your name in unexpected places. They hear about your accomplishment in uncontrollable chats. Your presence hovers over them, not because you want retribution, but because they can't avoid the truth. You were never intended to be like them. You were never intended to obey their rules, to be bound by their constraints, to fit into their narrow and predictable universe. You were intended to be greater, and that is exactly what occurred. The arrogant inevitably collapse because they assume their position is secure. They believe their beliefs determine reality, and that their dismissiveness creates the future. But what they consistently fail to realize is that chosen ones are not constrained by regular mind's assumptions. They ascend because they were always supposed to. And now those who underestimated you must choose between sitting in remorse and pretending it never happened. But you don't notice them anymore because you're too busy creating, constructing, and thriving, living the life they said you'd never have. This is the final legacy of the chosen ones. Not just proving them incorrect, not just rising above, but rendering them obsolete. As a result, everything turns out just as it should. The chosen ones ascend, the arrogant fall, and those who questioned you are left behind to drown in their own sorrow. They believe they could determine your value, restrict your potential, and shape your future. However, they are now only a forgotten lesson in your amazing tale. You were not supposed to be one of them. You were intended to be bigger and better. Subscribe and leave 77 in the comments. If you are aware that you have always been different, share this message because more chosen ones must wake up.